The bus stop on Mercer Street smelled like rain and exhaust, and Imani almost didn't notice the old woman at all. She was moving fast that morning, the way she always moved. Head down, tote bag cutting into her shoulder, trying to get to her shift at the hospital laundry before 7. She had exactly $4.30 in her pocket, a half-eaten granola bar in her bag, and a light bill due in 3 days that she had no idea how she was going to pay. She did not have time to notice anyone, but then she saw her. The woman was standing at the edge of the curb, maybe 70 years old, maybe older, holding 2 heavy plastic bags that were clearly too much for her arms. One of the bags had split at the bottom and was leaking what looked like rice, little white grains trailing down the sidewalk. The woman didn't seem to know, or maybe she did know and she just didn't have a free hand to do anything about it. Nobody was stopping. People walked past her like she was a lamppost. Imani stopped. "Ma'am." She stepped off the curb. "Ma'am, your bag is tearing." The woman looked up. She had deep-set eyes, the color of dark wood, and her face was the kind of face that had lived through things. Not hard, just experienced. She looked at Imani the way older people sometimes look at young people who stop to help, like she wasn't sure whether to be grateful or embarrassed. "Oh, Lord," the woman said quietly, looking down at the rice on the ground. Imani set down her tote bag, pulled out the small roll of packing tape she kept for wrapping her sneakers in the rain, a weird habit, but hers, and crouched down by the torn bag. She taped it up the best she could. It wasn't pretty. It would hold maybe another 20 minutes. But it was something. "Where are you going?" Imani asked. The woman told her an address on Claremont Avenue. 8 blocks. 8 blocks with 2 full bags of groceries, a taped-up tier, and hands that were clearly shaking. Imani looked at her watch. If she walked the woman to Claremont, she would be 12 minutes late. Her supervisor, Mr. Osi, had already warned her once this month. She picked up one of the bags anyway. "I'll walk with you," she said. The woman's name was Mama V. That's what she said when Imani asked. Just Mama V, the way some older women in the South Side had, of giving you a name that wasn't quite their name, but was more true than the name on their license. She talked the whole 8 blocks, which Imani didn't mind, because Mama V talked the way people talk when they've been alone too much, with a hunger for it, filling the air with small details about her garden, her bad knee, her son who worked too hard and ate too little. "He's a good boy," Mama V said, adjusting her bag as they turned onto Claremont. "Stubborn, but good." Imani smiled and didn't say anything. She had learned that with older people, you didn't need to say much. You just had to keep walking. At the door of a brownstone with a small clay pot of geraniums on the step, Mama V stopped and looked at Imani the way you look at someone you want to remember. "You're going to be late to wherever you're going," she said. It wasn't a question. "A little," Imani admitted. Mama V nodded slowly. "What's your name, baby?" "Imani." "Imani." She said it the way you say a word when you're deciding whether to keep it. That's a name that means faith. She pressed Imani's hand with both of hers, her palms dry and warm. "Thank you." Imani was late to work. Mr. Osei didn't say anything, but he marked it in the book, and she saw him do it. She forgot about Mama V by the following Tuesday. 3 weeks later, a job posting showed up on the break room bulletin board. The Caldwell Group, a private property management firm, 12 floors in the building on 5th and Oak, was looking for an administrative coordinator, no degree required, starting salary nearly double what Imani made at the hospital laundry. Benefits. Paid time off. Imani stared at it for a long time. Then she photographed it with her phone and went back to sorting linens. She had a GD and 2 years of community college she hadn't finished. She had never worked in an office. She had applied for jobs like this before, twice, 3 times, and each time she made it to the 2nd round and then heard nothing. The silence after those applications had a particular weight. She knew that weight well. She applied anyway. She figured she had nothing to lose but the stamp. She got a call back 2 days later. The interview was on a Thursday afternoon. Imani borrowed a blazer from her neighbor Cheryl and wore her one pair of dress pants, the ones she kept folded flat under her mattress to hold the crease. She took the 22 bus downtown and arrived 8 minutes early and sat in the lobby doing slow breathing the way her mother had taught her. The woman who interviewed her was sharp, professional, with reading glasses pushed up into her hair and a way of asking questions that made Imani feel like every answer was being filed away. Somewhere, her name was Miss Holt. She looked at Imani's resume without any readable expression. "Tell me about a time you had to manage competing priorities," Miss Holt said. Imani talked about the hospital laundry, how on overflow days she was responsible for sorting, logging, and coordinating pickup for 3 floors at once with a team of 2 people. She talked about the system she'd made up herself with color-coded tags because the existing tracking sheet kept causing errors. Miss Holt wrote something down. The interview lasted 40 minutes. At the end, Miss Holt thanked her and said they'd be in touch. Imani went home, took off Cheryl's blazer, hung it carefully on the door, and told herself not to hope too much. She got the job. She started on a Monday in March, and from the first morning she could feel that the office had its own weather system. There were 8 people on the administrative team. There was Petra, who handled client files and had been there 11 years and knew where everything was. There was Devon, who was funny and generous with the coffee. There was Simone. Imani noticed Simone on the first day the way you notice a cold draft, not looking directly at it, just feeling it. Simone was maybe 28, immaculate in a way that took real effort, and she had been the coordinator before the position was expanded to 2 people. She shook Imani's hand on that first Monday, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We're so glad you're here," Simone said. She did not seem glad. At first, it was small things. Documents that Simone was supposed to share with Imani that arrived late or incomplete. Emails CC'd to everyone except Imani. A meeting with the floor manager, Mr. Caldwell's son, that Simone mentioned only after it had happened. "Oh, I thought Petra told you," with that same smile. Imani learned the job anyway. She stayed late. She asked Petra questions and took notes in a small spiral notebook she kept in her drawer. She came in early on Wednesdays when the weekly reports were due and made sure hers were done before 9. She was careful. She was professional. She did not give Simone anything to work with. But Simone didn't need anything to work with. She made her own material. It started with the petty cash. The office kept a petty cash box in the supply room for small purchases. Printer ink, coffee, stamps. The coordinator on duty for the week was responsible for logging withdrawals. In Imani's 3rd week, it was her turn. She logged everything the way she always did, precise and dated. On Friday afternoon, Miss Holt called her in. "There's a discrepancy," Miss Holt said in a voice that was carefully neutral. $40 is unaccounted for. Imani felt the floor shift slightly under her feet. "I logged every withdrawal," she said. "I know you said that." Ms. Holt slid a copy of the log across the desk. There was a gap. Wednesday afternoon, a $40 withdrawal, no name beside it. Imani looked at that blank line for a long time. She had not made a withdrawal on Wednesday afternoon. She had been at her desk from 1 o'clock until she left at 5:30, and Petra had been with her for most of it, troubleshooting a client database issue. "I didn't take that money," Imani said. "I believe you believe that," Ms. Holt said, which was not the same thing as believing her. Imani went back to her desk and sat very still. Simone was at her own desk, typing. She didn't look up, but there was something in the set of her shoulders, a kind of satisfied stillness, that made Imani feel cold all over. She said nothing. She went home. She sat at her kitchen table and looked at her light bill, which she'd finally managed to pay, and thought about how fast things could be taken from you. In the following 2 weeks, 2 more things went wrong. A client file that Imani had prepared was found to have missing pages. Pages that Imani knew she had included, because she had printed them herself and checked them twice. A phone message from a priority client, left for Imani specifically, never made it to her desk. When the client called back, frustrated, Miss Holt handled the call herself, and afterwards looked at Imani, with an expression that was harder to read than it had been before. Petra saw it. Petra had been watching the whole time. "Be careful," Petra told her quietly one morning by the coffee machine. Just those 2 words, and then she moved away with her mug. Imani was careful. She started keeping copies of everything she submitted, time-stamped on her personal email. She started arriving early enough to log into the system before anyone else was in, so there was a timestamp on her activity. She started writing down, in her spiral notebook, every interaction with Simone that felt wrong, with the date and time beside it. She didn't know if any of it would matter. She just needed to feel like she wasn't standing on sand. The thing that finally broke it open happened on a Thursday. The office was quiet that afternoon. Devon was out sick, Petra was in a meeting with a vendor, and Imani was the only one in the main room when she heard the door to the supply room close. She glanced up. Simone had just gone in. That wasn't unusual, but something, she couldn't have said what, just a feeling that sat wrong, made Imani stand up. She walked to the supply room door and opened it. Simone was standing at the shelf where the petty cash box sat. Her hand was on it. She turned when the door opened, and for 1 second, just one, her face showed exactly what was happening. And then the smile came back. "Just checking the ink cartridges," Simone said. The petty cash box was on the opposite side of the shelf from the ink cartridges. They both knew that. Imani didn't say anything. She went back to her desk and typed up what she'd seen, time-stamped it to herself, and printed it out and put it in her bag. She didn't confront Simone. She didn't go to Miss Holt, not yet, because she had learned, the way people learn things they wish they didn't have to, that saying what you saw with no proof is just noise, and noise disappears. She waited. The proof came from a camera. The building had updated its internal security 6 weeks earlier, adding small cameras in the hallways and, as it turned out, one that covered the supply room doorway from the corridor. Imani hadn't known about it. Neither, apparently, had Simone. It was the building's security manager, a quiet man named Mr. Faris, who flagged it. He had been reviewing footage for an unrelated matter, something about a package going missing from the mailroom, and he'd seen something on a Wednesday 3 weeks back that made him rewind and watch again. He brought it to Mr. Caldwell Sr. Mr. Caldwell Sr. was 71 years old and had built the company from a single rental property on the south side. He had the unhurried gravity of a man who had seen most varieties of human behavior and was not particularly surprised by any of them. He called Miss Holt into his office first. Then he called Imani. When Imani sat down across from him, she did not know yet what was happening. She had her spiral notebook in her bag. She was prepared for another conversation she would have to survive. "You've been here 2 months, Mr. Caldwell said. "Yes, sir. How do you find the work?" She looked at him steadily. "I like it. I'm good at it." He nodded as if that answer confirmed something. Then he turned the laptop on his desk toward her. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Wednesday afternoon, the supply room corridor. Simone alone entering. The timestamp, the duration, and in the security log beside it, Mr. Faris had done his job thoroughly. A record of the door being propped open, which was how the camera had picked up the angle inside. Simone at the petty cash box, not checking ink cartridges, not reaching for anything on the shelf near it, just opening the box. Imani sat very still and watched the whole thing. "We've been reviewing the past 6 weeks, Mr. Caldwell said when it was done. "There are other instances. Miss Holt is handling the situation with Miss Simone now as we speak." Imani nodded. She didn't trust herself to say much. "I also want to say," Mr. Caldwell continued, "that I reviewed your file, your logs, your submissions. The pattern of what went wrong, and when, and what was found later to have been interfered with." He looked at her over his reading glasses. "You documented everything." "I thought I might need it," Imani said. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You were right." He folded his hands on the desk. "The coordinator position is being restructured. I want to offer you the senior role. It's a 15% increase, and you would have direct oversight of the administrative team." A pause. "If you want it." Imani thought about the morning she'd taped up a stranger's bag on Mercer Street and been 12 minutes late to a job she was trying so hard to keep. She thought about $4.30 and a light bill she couldn't pay. "Yes," she said, "I want it." She didn't see Mama V again until a Sunday in April. It was at the church potluck 3 blocks from Imani's apartment, one of those events she went to every few months because her neighbor Cheryl always made her, and because the food was genuinely good. She was carrying a tray of her mother's cornbread when she walked through the door of the fellowship hall and nearly ran directly into an elderly woman coming the other way. The woman caught herself on the doorframe and looked up. Imani recognized those deep-set eyes immediately. "Mama V." The old woman's face opened like a window. "Imani," she said. "Imani with the tape." Imani laughed. "A real one. surprised out of her. "You remember?" "I remember everything," Mama V said, with a dignity that made it sound absolutely true. They sat together through most of the potluck, and it was during that conversation, between the sweet potato pie and the third round of lemonade, that Imani learned things she hadn't known before. Mama V's last name was Caldwell. Her son, she said, had a property company, did well for himself, stubborn but good. Imani set down her fork very slowly. "Your son," she said. "Is his name?" "Theodore," Mama V said. "Theodore Caldwell, but I call him Teddy and he hates it." She smiled, and the smile was full of quiet pride. Imani looked at her for a long moment. She thought about the lobby on 5th, an oak the reading glasses pushed into Ms. Holt's hair, the security camera footage she'd watched on a laptop screen. She thought about a man who built a company from a single property on the South Side, who had the gravity of someone who had seen most varieties of human behavior. She thought about 8 blocks on Claremont Avenue and a taped-up bag leaking rice. "He's the one who gave me my job," Imani said. Mama V looked at her. The look lasted just a moment too long, and in it Imani could see that Mama V was putting things together too. "Tell me about this job," Mama V said. Imani told her everything. When she finished, the fellowship hall had thinned out and someone was stacking chairs in the corner. Mama V sat with her hands folded in her lap and a look on her face that Imani couldn't quite name. It was too specific for any one word. "That morning on Mercer Street," Mama V said finally, "I was having a bad day. My knee had been bad all week. I'd taken the bus and the driver let me off 2 stops too early." She shook her head slightly. "Nobody stopped. Not one person, and I was standing there for almost 10 minutes. She paused. "And then you stopped." "Of course I stopped," Imani said. "No," Mama V said gently. "Not of course. Not at all, of course." She reached over and patted Imani's hand the same way she had on the step of the brownstone on Claremont, dry palms, warm. "I never told Teddy about that morning. I don't usually tell him when things like that happen, because he worries." Imani nodded. "But I'm going to tell him now." 2 Sundays later, Theodore Caldwell, Teddy, who hated the name, appeared at the church potluck in a suit that was slightly too formal for the occasion, and with an expression that suggested he'd been told something that had rearranged him a little. He found Imani by the food table. He was a tall man, solidly built, with his mother's dark wood eyes. "My mother told me a story about a young woman on Mercer Street," he said. No preamble, no small talk. He said it like a man who had learned, somewhere along the way, to say the thing directly. "I remember that morning," Imani said. "She said you were going to be late to work." "I was late to work." He was quiet for a moment. "You never mentioned it to me. When we met in my office." "It never came up," Imani said simply. He looked at her for a moment with that same rearranged look. "Most people would have mentioned it." "Most people," Imani said, "maybe. I didn't help her because I thought I'd get something from it. I helped her because her bag was tearing and she needed someone to carry it." She looked at him levelly. "Those are different things." Theodore Caldwell was quiet for what felt like a long time. "My mother," he said, "has been asking me for 4 years to come to this potluck." He looked around at the fellowship hall, the folding tables, the mismatched chairs, the enormous pan of someone's macaroni going fast near the door. "This is the first time I've come." Imani smiled. "The macaroni's worth it." He smiled back. It was a real smile, a little rusty, the kind that looks like it doesn't get used quite enough. He asked if he could sit with her. She moved her plate over and made room. Mama V watched them from across the room with her sweet potato pie and said nothing at all. Just sat with that particular expression that older women have when something they waited a long time for finally arrives. Not smug, not triumphant, just deeply, quietly satisfied. Imani didn't know, that afternoon, what any of it would become. She didn't know that Theodore would ask for her number before. The chairs were all stacked, or that he would use it, or that Mama V would somehow always be at whatever table they ended up at for the next several months. She didn't know those things yet. What she knew was simpler. She had stopped for a stranger on a Tuesday morning, with $4 in her pocket and tape on her sneakers, and she had done it without thinking about what it would cost her or what she might get back. And somehow, not because the universe owed her anything, and not because good deeds always come back around, because they don't, and she knew that, but somehow, this time, Something had found its way back to her that she hadn't even known she was missing. She picked up her lemonade and drank it, and let the afternoon be what it was.